In this video, I've combined two popular threads because they are pretty similar in nature. Both of them deal with the concept of alternate dimensions, or what you might think of as parallel universes. To this day, neither of these stories has a clear explanation, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Every Saturday night, I'll be sharing chilling paranormal stories and horrifying true crime tales from Asia, so make sure you don't miss out. In 2013, a girl posted on Douban claiming she experienced something strange in what she called a mirrored room. To this day, she can't figure it out and asked for help from the online community. She wrote, "If I can't find a reasonable scientific explanation and if my friend wasn't hiding anything from me, then this is the most obvious and definite paranormal experience I've ever had." The story itself is pretty simple. My friend's furniture kept rearranging in a completely mirrored way, and she lived in the room without noticing a thing. She was living in a company-provided apartment, sharing it with a few colleagues. Her room had a sliding door that directly faced the bathroom. If the bathroom door wasn't closed, she could see the bathroom mirror as soon as you open the door. Pretty creepy at night. The room was totally symmetrical. Everything that couldn't be moved, like the door, windows, radiators, electrical outlets, and switches, was designed in a mirror image layout, with a standing air conditioner perfectly centered and immovable. In late June 2012, I stayed over at her place for a few days, but strangely, as soon as I walked into the apartment, it felt eerily empty, like this building had been abandoned for a long time. I walked into her room, and to the right of the air conditioner was a bed and nightstand, while on the left was a glass cabinet, a black piano, and a desktop computer. I visited again in July, and as soon as I walked in, I noticed that the furniture had been completely swapped around. To make it easier to explain, I drew a floor plan. I laughed and teased her, saying, "Wow, you must be really bored to rearrange all this furniture. Wasn't that a lot of work?" But she just looked at me like I was crazy. Didn't hate me. Moving such heavy furniture around would be a huge task, especially for someone as small as her, so I pressed her, asking why she did this. She thought I was the weird one and insisted she hadn't moved anything. It had always been like that. I was baffled since I clearly remember the layout being the opposite the first time I visited. I kept questioning her until she got annoyed and finally said, "Fine, yeah, I just wanted to switch things up." I dropped it after that. But it still didn't make sense to me. She's always working overtime, and on weekends, she's usually at home catching up on sleep. Where would she find the energy to do all this? I kept bringing it up, and to her, I must have seemed like a crazy person obsessed with a minor detail. Eventually, she got serious and told me that she really hadn't moved anything and that the room's layout had always been like this way. Then I remembered I took a full-body selfie in her mirror during my first visit, and I also took some nail pictures at the computer desk. I dug out the photos to show her, and to compare, I took new ones from the same spot. The difference was clear. The angles were completely flipped. I showed her the photos, but she insisted that I must have mirrored them to freak her out. At this point, the poster uploaded the photos for us to analyze. First, we can confirm that the image wasn't mirrored because the text on the computer screen isn't flipped. The second picture is harder to judge because of the poor quality, but we can still clearly see that the whole layout has been switched. The last set of pictures are her two mirror selfies. The poster explained that the cabinets look different because they are not symmetrical. They are actually two separate pieces put together, but this also further proves she didn't mirror the photo. Let's pay attention to the two black spots on the wood. As you can see, the shapes changed when appeared in this photo, so they are not the same ones, and the bed really did move from the left side to the right. Later, the girl showed the photos to her friend again, but her friend still insisted the room had never changed and thought the poster was just messing with her. However, several days later, here came the twist. One day in August, she called me saying she suddenly felt really creeped out. She noticed that a few days earlier, a friend had posted a photo on Weibo from August 5th showing her in her room. The angle was strange. In the photo, she's playing with her cat on the air conditioner, and her friend is taking the picture from the bed. In her mind, the bed is always on the left side, but in the picture, the bed is on the right side, which means during her friend's stay in early August, the bed has somehow been moved symmetrically. To verify, I immediately went to her friend's Weibo and asked about it. I took screenshots of our conversation. So we can say only the room owner remembers the bed being on the left side, but her two friends both remember it being on the right. This post went viral and people started speculating. Some suggested the girl might have a mental illness, like moving the furniture around during an episode and not realizing it afterward. But the poster said she'd known her friend for years and had never seen any signs of mental illness or even sleepwalking. In the end, the mystery was never solved, and no one has been able to explain it. Luckily, the room didn't cause the girl any harm and they eventually moved out. Personally, I think the room is really strange. It's completely symmetrical, even down to the wall sockets. Does that mean the wiring is symmetrical too? Is that even possible? If anyone knows more about room design, please share in the comments. And from a feng shui perspective, having a bathroom directly facing the door is really bad. Bathrooms are places where negative energy gathers, which can attract spirits. If you watch horror movies, you've probably noticed this. And mirrors, they can reflect negative energy and also serve as gateways to another world. Combining these two, I think even a house with great energy will be affected. Someone in the comments joked, check if your friend's mole have mirror too. If they have, maybe she's been mirrored and replaced. I'm a native of Shanghai, living near Luban Road and Zhongshan South Road in Huangpu District. There's an overpass nearby, and just a little further ahead is the Expo Park. I'm mentioning my address to prove I'm not making this up. After the Shanghai World Expo ended, that whole area became overgrown with weeds, turning into a true no man's land. I have a Japanese friend, let's call him Junai. He's half Chinese, half Japanese. His parents lived in Japan, so he was staying temporarily with his uncle in Shanghai. We went to the same middle school, staying in the same class, but after graduation, we lost touch. The reason was simple. He was going to a high school in Japan and didn't need to take any entrance exams, while I was fully focused on preparing for mine. Just when I thought we might never see each other again, Junai came back to Shanghai for a holiday and planned to visit his uncle's place. When he returned, he surprisingly thought of me and wanted to hang out. Naturally, I was thrilled and even got 500 yuan from my parents to cover our entertainment expenses. When I got the money, my first thought was to take Junai out to a nice restaurant as a way to make up for him missing our graduation party. We decided on the same restaurant where we had the party, Qiandao Lake Fish Restaurant, located on South Tibet Road. The restaurant was a reasonable distance from my place, but there wasn't a direct bus route, so we had to walk. Looking back, if we had taken a cab that day, all the weird stuff that followed probably wouldn't have happened. When we finally got to the restaurant, for some reason, it was already closed early. But Junai wasn't upset and just suggested we grab something nearby instead. After eating, we strolled around, chatting about the funny things that happened back in school. Junai even confided in me that he had a crush on a girl from our class but never had the courage to tell her. By this time, we had walked near the Expo Park and passed by a place called Yuanda Pavilion. I remembered it because its architecture was really unique. Looked like a slender pyramid. There was also a security booth at the entrance of the pavilion and a screen shaped like a hand, but the power was off and it was rusty and weather-beaten. As we walked by, the light was on in the security booth, but the guard wasn't there, probably off to the bathroom or something. That's when Junai suddenly turned to me with this really strange smile and said, "Let's go inside and take a look." I swear I'll never forget the look on his face, stiff and kind of eerie. But at that time, I didn't think much of it, just thought he was trying to be mischievous. Even though I was a little scared, my curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed. Almost as if something was pushing me to follow him in. Once we were inside, to my right was a row of old houses, each with a white paper sealed on the door, looking really creepy in the dim light. Junai was wearing a white shirt, which made him stand out in the dark. I kept telling him to be more careful so the guard wouldn't notice us, but he just charged ahead like he didn't hear me. We quickly reached the end of this dark area, not because we were too scared to go further, but because there was nothing more to explore. After the expo, many of the pavilions were fenced off with wire barriers, and the Yuanda Pavilion only had a small section left open. After leaving, we decided to check out another unknown pavilion. There was a run-down overpass, waist-high weeds, and a rusty highball sculpture. There wasn't a guard on duty, but the gate was locked, and we couldn't push or pull it open. That's when Junai suddenly grabbed a rock from the roadside and started smashing the lock, like getting through this gate was something he absolutely had to do. I felt a sudden sense of unease. Junai had never been the quiet type, but had never seen him act so impulsively before. Just as I was about to warn him that he might alert the guard, the lock actually broke open. I watched as Junai pushed open the gate and slipped into the pitch-black expo park. He kept calling me to follow him in, his voice unusually excited. I was scared and hesitated for a long time, but eventually I went in. Junai was unusually energetic that night, touching and exploring everything around him. As we ventured further in, we soon reached the overpass. The stairs leading up was blocked off with wire mesh, making it impossible to climb. Just like before, Junai became irritable and started kicking at it, eventually creating a gap, and I helped pull it open. We climbed up to the overpass, but there was nothing up there. By this time, it was night and the surrounding area was completely dark. I could barely make out Junai's face, but I had a vague sense that he was very excited. Then he suggested we check out a nearby building. I was too scared and told him to go ahead while I stayed behind to keep watch. Junai was silent for a moment before heading down. The door to that building was also sealed. I turned on my phone's flashlight to illuminate Junai, and to my surprise, he violently tore off the seal and forced his way inside. At this point, I was really frightened. Who knows if breaking the seal was illegal? But out of loyalty to my friend, I stayed outside to keep watch, hoping he would come out quickly. But after Junai went inside, there was no sound, no movement at all, and I couldn't contact him because his phone had a Japanese number. In the distance, I saw lights, probably the security guards doing their routine patrol. If they saw the damaged wall mesh under the overpass, they'd definitely come up to check. There was nothing to hide behind, so I was sure to be caught. Weighing my options, I bolted. I ran back to the entrance and locked the gate, pretending nothing had happened. Of course, I didn't really leave since Junai was still inside. I waited at the entrance, hoping he would come out soon. But the eerie thing is, Junai never came back. There was no sound or sign of anyone in that building, as if everything we had done never happened. To be honest, I considered telling the security guard the truth and asking them to help find Junai, even if it meant getting scolded or fined. But I was afraid of getting a school penalty, so I dropped the idea. I waited there for nearly half an hour, but no one came out of that building. I don't remember how I managed to walk home alone, feeling dazed and out of sorts the entire way. I had no idea how to explain this to Junai's uncle and was even worried that I might get expelled from high school because of it. The more I thought about it, the more overwhelmed I became. When I got home, I told my parents what had happened. They thought I was joking and immediately called Junai's uncle, but the result left me chilled to the bone, something I'll never forget. After the call, my father looked puzzled, almost amused, and told me that Junai hadn't gone missing at all. He had returned home early and never ventured into the expo park. Instead, he had walked home with me. When my father mentioned this, he even asked why I would make up such a story and wanted to know where I had really been and why I was so late getting back. But by then, my mind was racing. How could it be that we had clearly been exploring the expo park together, side by side, yet he had somehow returned home before me? Even if he had sneaked away, how could he have walked home with a different me? Who was that other me? The next day, Junai was preparing to return to Japan, so I went to see him. He was about to head out and looked genuinely happy to see me, with no traces of a sneaky grind. I asked him what had really happened the previous night, and he looked at me strangely, saying we had simply walked back home together after failing to get into the restaurant. Once home, he had watched a health show on Dragon TV with his aunt and uncle before going to bed early. Seeing the awkward expression on my face, he even told me the details of the show. A program about elderly health featuring a certain Chinese medicine expert. He said I could check if I didn't believe him. I did check later, and sure enough, the show aired as he said. At the same time, we were supposedly exploring the expo park. Junai returned to Japan afterward, and we lost touch. He never came back to China, but I saw from his social media that he was doing well. However, this incident became a lingering knot in my heart, something I couldn't explain or share with anyone. But the story doesn't end here. Afterward, a series of events seemed to erase Junai's existence from my life. First, a financial dispute arose between Junai's aunt and his mother, cutting off my access to any updates about him. Later, it became difficult for our classmates to stay in touch, and strangely, many people didn't remember who Junai was. Those who did recall him couldn't describe what he looked like. After our exploration, the previously closed-off expo park suddenly began to be repurposed. The government started building cinemas, parking lots, and small parks here. Everything was being renewed, and all traces of our adventure were gradually erased. Then, in 2021, I learned that Junai had passed away due to COVID-19. But the story doesn't end here either. On February 15th, 2021, the author updated the post, sharing how, years later, he couldn't resist trying to uncover the truth. Yesterday, on a whim, I asked my parents about Junai. I thought they might not remember, but surprisingly, they did. They even recalled us playing soccer together at the Luwan Sports Complex. However, they only remembered that much, couldn't recall what kind of boy Junai was, what he looked like, or his personality. This brought back memories from those days. Back then, Junai and I were both taller than our peers, so we were chosen as rugby players and often went to the Luwan Sports Complex to train. We even had a locker there where we kept personal items. This gave me an idea. Maybe I could go there and find some traces of the past. So today, I made a special trip to the complex, and to my surprise, I found something. Of course, after so many years, Junai's locker had long been reassigned to someone else, but fortunately, the items left behind were stored in the lost and found box. I found some of Junai's belongings there. It was a bottle of floral water, a tube of hand cream, a candy box, and a photo. The candy box contained 3 blue stones. I licked one, and it was extremely bitter, like some kind of chemical compound. Later, I had a friend in the forensic department analyze it, and it turned out to be copper sulfate crystals. The photo was of a person named Zhou Dedong, a famous horror novelist whom Junai must have liked. The hand cream and floral water were moldy due to age, looking no different from ordinary lost items. These clues led nowhere, and my investigation inevitably hit a dead end. In the following 2 weeks, my mind was consumed with this incident, trying to find any clues about him from my fading memories. However, due to the passage of time, all methods proved ineffective. Finally, clinging to the last thread of hope, I returned to the place where Junai and I spent the most time together, our middle school. But what I didn't expect was that this investigation led me to uncover an even greater mystery surrounding Junai. Using the excuse of visiting teachers, I contacted our former homeroom teacher. I told her about Junai's passing and mentioned I wanted to find his old textbook as a keepsake. The teacher was shocked and felt sorry for me and agreed without hesitation. Finally, in a pile of old books, I found a literature textbook with no name or cover, but I recognized Junai's handwriting instantly. The first few pages were normal, but when I got to the chapter about the donkey of Guizhou, I saw a few faint pencil marks that read, "If anyone said this, save me. 10 years, 20 years, later, 22, disaster by illness." I couldn't make sense of the message. What did 10 years, 20 years mean? And what did 22 refers to? Filled with questions, I said goodbye to the teacher. As I was leaving, she told me that the math teacher had recently returned from out of town and suggested I visited him as well. I gladly agreed, hoping he might remember something about Junai. But what happened next shattered my resolve to continue the investigation. The first time, I went to the teacher's old address in Xinzhuang, only to find the place empty. Then I went home and called the teacher, but it was his son who answered. He said the area had been demolished a few years ago, and that they now lived in Qingpu district. He invited me to visit the next day, and I gladly agreed. The following day, I took the subway to visit them. But Line 2 had a malfunction and was stuck at one station for a long time. So when I finally arrived, the teacher had gone out for square dancing, thinking I wouldn't show up. The third time, I took Line 13 to the last stop, then called a taxi to the teacher's house. But a section of the road was being paved with asphalt, and the taxi couldn't pass, forcing a long detour. Reluctant to pay the hefty fare, I walked the rest of the way, but my phone battery died just as I reached the dock area without streetlights. Unsure where to go, I had to return to the metro station and apologize profusely to the teacher later. The fourth time, I skipped school in the morning to head to the teacher's house. This time, I arrived on time, but the teacher's dog had an appointment for neutering. And although the teacher was apologetic, the appointment was important, so we had to reschedule. The fifth time, I received a sudden notification from school about checking my thesis, forcing me to cancel our meeting and rewrite my thesis at home. The sixth time, I left my phone at home. I only realized it when I tried to buy a mask at the subway entrance. Since I couldn't pay and couldn't take the subway without a mask, I had no choice but to go home. The seventh time, the teacher was at Xiangshan Hospital for a routine checkup for his chronic rheumatism, and I missed him again. That day, the teacher's son told me that in 2 days, the teacher planned to return to his hometown in the north. If I wanted to visit, I should do it soon. The 8th time, I made sure everything was in order. Time, phone, everything was confirmed. But on the way, I was so exhausted from writing my thesis that I fell asleep and missed my stop, ending up miles away from the teacher's home. The 9th time, I was suddenly bitten by a stray dog on my way and had to go to the hospital for shots. The 10th time, the teacher left Shanghai. Was this all just a coincidence? I don't know. Since the teacher left, I had been in a state of complex emotions, puzzled, scared, and helpless. It seemed as if some unseen force was preventing me from the investigation, and it was indeed erasing all traces of Junai. Later, the poster gave up on seeking the truth. For one, there was no clue at all. For another, he had graduated from college and was busy with his internship. With that, the post was archived and never updated again. Actually, I've condensed these details. The original post was very long and included many far-fetched elements. After reading the whole thing, I feel that the poster is a very sensitive person. That is to say, he pays close attention to details, and as a result, he often connected events that seem trivial to us to the disappearance of Junai. However, I can't deny there are many eerie aspects to this story. First, what exactly happened at the restaurant? Junai said they went straight home, but the poster remembered them going on an adventure. If both accounts are true, it means they entered different timelines at the restaurant. One where the poster and another version of Junai went to the Expo pavilion, and one where Junai and another version of the poster went home. The second point is the sentence written in his Chinese textbook. If anyone said this, save me. 10 years, 20 years later, 22, disaster by illness. It's worth mentioning that when Chinese people refer to years in this century, they often use only the last 2 digits. So this sentence could be talking about 10 or 20 years later, or it could be referring to after 2010 or 2020. But no matter how we interpret it, it doesn't align with what happened later. The only thing that does match is that the expo was held in 2010. So regarding this, many netizens think the poster made up a story full of plot holes. Some suspect the poster has delusions, and of course, others have proposed a bold theory that Junai and his family were Japanese spies, and after their missions were completed, all traces of them were erased. Wow! As for the idea of parallel worlds, I believe they exist. Let me share 2 experiences that happened to me. When I was little, I lived with my grandparents. One time, my grandmother gave me some pocket money, which I casually placed on the table. But in the blink of an eye, the bill disappeared. I swear it was just the 2 of us in the room, and it was a hot summer day with no wind to blow the money away. Then my grandmother said it was taken by a mischievous spirit who likes to play with kids. She said if I gave up finding it, the spirit would lose interest and return it, so she gave me more pocket money, and we went about our day. About an hour later, the missing money reappeared on the table, lying there quietly with the same wrinkles I had left on it. Another time was during my 2nd year of middle school when I went to buy lunch near the school during the lunch break. On my way back to school, I saw my math teacher across the street, hurrying eastward in a black coat and a neat hat. I didn't think much of it, but after walking a few steps, I glanced over and saw the same math teacher hurrying past again. The same direction, same appearance, same outfit, same hurry stride. Well, it's possible that this world is like a preset program, and sometimes it inevitably has glitches. Well, that's all for this video. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. Next Saturday night, it could be a paranormal story or it could be a criminal case. Let's wait and see.